Yanguas's unforced errors count per match is the best on tour, i.e. the lowest alongside Chingoto's. And I'd say that actually Yanguas generates more winners than Chingoto, or at least probably a very similar amount, which reflects how good he's been for the past 5-6 months.
It's very rarely that we actually see Goyo playing better than Tapia and them winning against Tingalan. So I just think that speaks volumes about how Tapia has to essentially put the weight of the pair on his shoulders and be the one that's like on fire to actually beat them.
But when you think about what the perfect partner is having the partner who supports you when you make the mistakes, but also just being positive when he makes the mistakes. And you can literally see Tapia make 3 errors in a row, and Goyo literally points at him and says, well done, and claps at him. And to be honest, I've never really seen anything like it. I'd probably say it's the most important award. At least one of the top 2-3 is this season's, or obviously we're giving mid-season award, but the best player, the MVP. And yeah, it's obviously an award that doesn't have many contenders in my eyes. It only really has 2 for me, being Tapia and Galan.
And that's a huge part, but at the end of the day, today's game, today's paddle is all about the offensive side, definitely at the pro level, and who can generate the most amount of winners. And to be honest, there's probably no better player to do that right now than Ale Galan. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Padel Pod, your weekly podcast covering professional paddle, presented by Hugo and Gons. We're on to episode 59, and as always, joined by my co-host here today, Hugo. It's great to have you on. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, Gons. I just wanted to make a quick point. It might be episode 60.
Yeah, actually,
I had a feeling it was a big milestone.
Yeah, actually, you know what? It could be. Let me literally just check right now, because I might just absolutely bottle that. Is it episode 59 or 60? Oh my God, it is. It's episode 60. So very sorry for all the audience and everyone, because yeah, I mean, Hugo was probably expecting like some massive comment. Episode 60. It is definitely a very big milestone. So sorry for that, because I absolutely butchered that.
Yeah, I thought, just because it was a big milestone, you were going to do something special, maybe like a handstand live on camera. I don't know.
Maybe we can do that for episode 100.
Nice. Yeah, we've got to prepare something big for the century. So yeah, guys, please do. Well, if you've got any suggestions, guys, feel free to share. We're very open, and I'd say we're pretty crazy in that sense. So we're pretty open to present any way you want us to.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe let's keep it for episode 100. So whatever comes our way, we have enough time to prepare.
Exactly. Agreed.
But yeah, maybe moving on, and from that horrible intro, because that was truly bad, truly awful, and hopefully the rest of the episode picks up and gets a bit better. But maybe moving on from that, we've got a pretty special episode in our hands today, not only because it's the 60th episode, but because we wanted to do something a little different. We wanted to take this time, given that there wasn't a big tournament this week. We did have some paddle. There was the FIP Sardinia tournament, which I think is a platinum tournament, but it's not like from the main Premier Paddle Tour, even though there was still some, very big names playing, and it was still kind of like a great watch and a fun watch. But we wanted to essentially take this opportunity, this time to give out our half, or I guess mid-season awards. So the Padel Pod awards. I mean, these are players are dying to get their hands on one of these. I've been told, but we are basically halfway through the season. If I'm not mistaken, there are 25 tournaments throughout the season, and I'm talking about P2s, P1s, and majors. And we've had 13 tournaments completed so far, so basically just over halfway. So yeah, we wanted to use this time to give our mid-season awards, because I mean, there's been a lot going on, and I'm very excited for it. Hugo, what about you?
Yeah, same. Really excited. It's always fun to just hear your thoughts as well, because we might feel differently about some of our shouts. Well, I'm sure we will. Even though we've got a pretty similar opinion on most things paddle. But yeah, I just wanted to, before we start, just a quick shout out to Edu Alonso and Momo Gonzalez for winning the FIP tournament in Sardinia. They actually didn't lose a single set throughout the whole tournament, and taking into account that this is their first tournament together, and that they were, I do think they were the second seeded pair, but still some other major pairs didn't make the final. For example, Vela and Garrido were the first seed, the number one seeded pair. Maxi Sanchez and Lucho Cabra were the third seeded pair. So yeah, credit where credit's due. Edu Alonso's been, I'd say, one of the most improved players this season. He's looking really, really solid. And Momo, perhaps not having the best time, given that he's had to face so many pair changes over the last probably 18 months. Obviously, now that Alex Ruiz has pulled a bit of a wild card and decided to team up with Garrido, it's not great for Momo. So yeah, I'm happy for Momo because I think he deserves it. He's a hard worker and he's a top player. But yeah, definitely 100%. Time for the awards now.
Yeah, no, it's a great shout, and glad you mentioned that. Actually, I don't know if you know, but I think it seems like they've confirmed to be a pair as well now. Edu Alonso and Momo. I've kind of seen a leak. I mean, not official from them, just kind of one of these, I guess, confirmed leak from like a very kind of reliable source that we've heard from in the past. So it does seem like they're going to continue to stick together and play on. So I'm very happy because both of them are top blokes.
I agree. They're just such likable players, probably some of the most likable players on tour. I'd say before this tournament, I thought as a pair, they were probably lacking a bit in the attacking kind of phase, the attacking play. Their smash game's not as powerful. Their volleys isn't. But, I mean, they've looked really, really good this week and they've literally won the tournament. So fair play to them and best of luck. Yeah,
exactly. So maybe now moving on to the juicy bits of the episode, obviously our awards. And talking about improvement, I think that the first award that we want to hand out is the most improved player award at this point in the season. Hugo, I'll let you kick us off.
Yeah, fair enough. It's a very important award, one of the most important awards in my eyes, because, well, last season, if I'm not mistaken, we agreed that probably John Sant was the most improved player. I mean, he was sensational throughout the whole season and improved his level a lot. And to be honest, I didn't have many doubts. I've decided to give it to Mike Yanguas. He's, as some of you know, he's a fellow, well, he's from Motril down in the south of Spain, which is very near where I go on holiday in the summer. So I'm very happy to give him this award. And I mean, to be honest, in my eyes, it's pretty obvious that this season's most improved pair has been Yanguas and Garrido. Thus, it had to be one of the two for me to win the award. And I think that Yanguas has been slightly more consistent than Garrido, particularly when playing against the top pairs. I felt that Garrido slightly struggled when playing against Tapia in that cross-court battle, or against, if I'm not mistaken, Stupa as well when they faced each other. Whereas I thought Yanguas was really dominant in those, well, in the big games against the top pairs, against Chingalan, against Koyan Tapia. So, yeah, I mean, Yanguas' unforced errors count per match is the best on tour, i.e. the lowest, alongside Chingoto's. And I'd say that actually Yanguas generates more winners than Chingoto, or at least probably a very similar amount, which reflects how good he's been for the past 5-6 months. So, I mean, yeah, those are the main reasons why I picked Yanguas. Who have you gone for, all guns?
Yeah, maybe before I do make my announcement, just I guess we do have to mention to our audience that some of the rules, I guess, that we've applied. So when we're giving out, individual awards, we can't pick the same players. So there's going to be a whole bunch of individual awards that we hand out, but just for the sake of not being repetitive potentially, or like trying to highlight different players and talk about the rest of the tour, because if not, we'd probably hand these awards to like the same, 4 or 5 players. So that's from an individual perspective. There'll also be pair awards. So those can be kind of handed together, meaning that if we hand one player the individual award, they can also win the sort of pair award. And I'm sure you'll follow along and you'll see what I mean. But yeah, I just wanted to highlight that before going with my choice for the most improved player so far. But I mean, I'm not gonna deviate, and I'm not gonna give a different answer this time. It's I think it's pretty clear as well. It's definitely Mike Yanguas. From a results perspective, I mean, he's had great results this year. I mean, climbed up all the way to being the 5th seed. And we sort of gave him, alongside Garrido, the sort of best of the rest, because they were really like top pair this season. And in terms of results, so a major final appearance at the Qatar Major, 2 semifinals as well. One being, for example, the P1 in Mar del Plata, which is quite an important tournament. And they've had like some incredible results in terms of beating top oppositions such as Lebron and Galan, such as Los Super Pibes, and a handful of times. So I just think that they've been just incredible. And you kind of mentioned it, Hugo. I feel like Yanguas has really been that driving force between sort of the pair between him and Garrido. I mean, Garrido's also been great, but the player that really stands out from that pair is Yanguas in terms of that defensive stability, being able to dictate play, and also not lacking offensively, because offensively he's been quite dominant as well. And then I also kind of just wanted to mention in terms of like the progress or the improvement that he's done. So last year, his best result was just one semi-final. It actually came, I think, at the Italy Major. So the fact that he's essentially halfway through this year and he's already got a final and two semifinals, I mean, I just think that shows the massive improvement right there.
Yeah, I totally agree. And actually, I just wanted to add one kind of final point. I think that really emphasizes why I think he's the most improved player and why he's a level above Garrido. Stupa, one of the best players in the world, has actually given him the chance to play with him now. And when you see Garrido, unfortunately, he's had to pair up with Alex Ruiz, who obviously is a top player, but I wouldn't say he goes into that ranking of the top 4 pairs. Well, I mean, we both agree that he doesn't. And Yanguas is now the 4th seeded pair, now that he's paired up with Stupa. So I think that really reflects how good he's been and the potential he has. And I think everyone sees it.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point as well.
Great. So yeah, maybe moving on to the next award. And it's a bit of a sad award. I don't really kind of love giving this award out, but I think we have to, and I think it's interesting. It's the most disappointing player, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, indeed.
Gons, do you want to kick off?
Should I go? All right. So drum roll, please. No, I'm just kidding. So I'm going to give it to Juan Lebron. And it really pains me to give him this award. I should even call it an award, as you kind of alluded to. But I mean, the main reason, and there's actually like kind of 2 reasons. One is the sort of sporting side. I think we've kind of seen how he's just not at the level that he used to be. I actually very recently saw a video from El Cuarto Set talking about the sort of best smashers in the game. And he gave some stats, which also were kind of provided by Padel Intelligence. We also love, and just massive shout out to them. But he was saying that within the top 10 players, LeBron has the worst smash efficiency percentage. And I think it was 48%. Now that essentially means that you lose, like the balance, you have a net negative balance when you smash. So it basically means you shouldn't smash because you lose more points than you win. And not only does he have the worst smashing efficiency, but he's one of the players that actually uses the most amount of smashes. Like he smashes a crazy amount of times. So when you combine those 2 factors together, it just is not a good recipe or a good winning formula. So we've seen this decline of his. He hasn't really been able to work it out with Paquito. There were huge expectations on that pair. Definitely didn't meet them. No title win. I mean, not even a final appearance. So it's just really disappointing from him. And not only is the sporting side disappointing, but on what I think as well has been disappointing on his side was the whole issue that led to him and Galan splitting. And when you also think about the fact that him and Galan started the season brilliantly, they won that P1 in Riyadh. They seemed like they were going to be the pair that was going to challenge Los Bombarderos the most. It kind of like the expectations for his season were so high. And now, and we all thought that it was going to be epic. And now looking back now, I'm sure that him right now, he probably didn't think that it was going to be this way at this point of the season, but unfortunately it is. In any case, I do have a lot of faith. I mean, he's an amazing player. I do have a lot of faith in him, and let's see what he does with Dineno. But I think for me, he definitely has to be the most disappointing player.
So that's 2 out of 2 awards that are going to the same player, because I've also picked Juan Lebron. And it's sad because I think he's one of the most talented players on tour, one of the most unpredictable players, one of the players with the most flair, one of the best players to kind of watch play. When you watch him play, he just looks so perfect. It's like an equivalent of watching Federer in tennis.
Very
He
true.
just looks perfect. And yeah, I mean, I think the stats regarding his smash are baffling, given that a few years ago he was one of the best smashers on tour, if not the best, and that was from the forehand side of the court. So yeah, I don't think there's really that much else to add, but maybe just an extra point and emphasizing the fact that he's been playing with Paquito, who's probably probably the fourth best backhand player on tour right now. Pretty similar level in terms of Stupa compared to Stupa, I'd say. But when you actually look at their results together, they haven't made a final. And I think the big games against the top pairs, it's been Lebron who's let the pair down more than Paquito. So even when you look at the data provided by, for example, Padel Intelligence, but also our colleagues from Padel Up, the Spanish podcast, which is obviously doing super well, they have their own set of data. And Paquito is always in the top players in terms of winners, unforced errors, and just his score. Whereas LeBron, nowhere to be seen. So yeah, I think no real contenders beyond him in my eyes.
Yeah, same for me. And so maybe moving on now to our third award, and this is kind of an interesting one. I think maybe here we will have a kind of different answers. Let's see. But we also wanted to hand out an award to the best tournament. So Hugo, let us know what you thought the best tournament has been so far.
Yeah, it was really hard to basically just stick with one. I have two shouts. Obviously, I'll pick one, but if it wasn't for the amount of players that suffered from food intoxication and had to pull out of the tournament, I would have said Puerto Cabello, because it marked the start of the Goya Dabia versus Chingo Dogalan epic rivalry, which is obviously continued until today. The final was incredibly tight. It went to 3 sets, and I thought the location was spectacular because the players were literally playing right next to the sea. I mean, if the players did a bordes and it was a bit aggressive, it would literally go into the sea, which I thought was quite funny, but also really cool to see. But I've ended up going for the Asunción P1 in Paraguay. And the reason, it was the best tournament for Lebron and Paquito, who I was really excited in terms of their partnership. I thought they were going to do really well. And they had 2 match points against Tapia Goya. They were literally a point away from beating them. And I think that could have really turned their partnership around. Goya and Tapia ended up turning that match around and winning that semi-final against them. But still, it was a really, really good match to watch. I thought they were really dominant against the number ones. Also, the Super Pibes took Chingalan to 3 sets. They won the first set against them. And even though they lost in the semi-finals against Chingalan, they were really good. Probably one of the best matches this season. And, well, the final was an epic. Goya and Tapia against Chingalan, 3 sets. And the third set was a tiebreak. So Goya and Tapia edged it this time. But I think it's a great reflection of their battles so far this season. So that's basically the reason why I've gone for Asunción. How about you, Gons?
Yeah, it's a really good shout. I think Asunción for me was definitely up there as well, but I've actually chosen a different tournament. Now I've gone for Brussels. I thought it was an incredible tournament. Mainly the reason why I've gone for Brussels was because I think it probably had my 2 favorite matches of the year. I think the first one being that quarterfinal between Coquillon and Paquito and Lebron, which was just an epic 3-set match. It ended up being going Coqui and John's way. So the score was 6-3, 4-6, and 7-5. And then in the final, which was another epic encounter between Chingalan and Coy and Tapia, and Chingalan won in 2 hours and 26 minutes. I'm not sure if maybe that's the longest match they've played. I mean, it was incredibly epic, and they won it 6-4, 6-7, so lost a tiebreak, and then 6-2 in the third set. So I remember watching as well, and if I'm not mistaken, it was the first kind of indoor tournament. And I remember when it finished and we did the episode, we spoke about how the just level of play was so much better and how nice it was to see them play indoors because the level was just so good. And those 2 matches in particular for me stood out. And in terms of the location as well, I thought it was a pretty good location and a pretty nice venue, and the courts as well were kind of cool. So yeah, I think that's probably my favorite tournament of the year so far.
Yeah, the courts were black as well, if I'm not mistaken, which I
Yeah,
always think looks quite cool.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's one other tournament that I'd love to mention just very quickly, and it's literally the opening tournament of the season. The only tournament that obviously Galan and Lebron won, and they beat Goyan Tapia in the final. It was like super anticipated final, and I thought it was
It was a
pretty
great
epic.
final. Yeah.
Great final. Galan smashing, unbelievable. But then right at the end, Goyan Tapia were looking for Lebron, and they were playing the lobs to Lebron, and Lebron performed. His smashing at the end of that match was decisive. So I think that was a really epic tournament as well. But yeah, I think we should probably move on. And the fourth award that we wanted to give out is the best offensive player. So the best attacking player, encompassing smashing, aggressive volleys, biboras, etc. Mainly point machines, point generating machines would be my definition. So Gonz, who have you gone for?
So for the best offensive player so far, I think I've gone with none other than Agustin Tapia. I think that, I mean, when he plays well, they are basically they beat Chingalan. If he doesn't play well, just don't beat Chingalan. I think I remember one final where it was Coelho that kind of played better than Tapia, but it's very rarely that we actually see Coelho playing better than Tapia and them winning against Chingalan. So I just think that speaks volumes about how Tapia has to essentially put the weight of the pair on his shoulders and be the one that's like on fire to actually beat them and generate a lot of winners. I think we've seen that Tapia's smashing is, I mean, it's one of the best, if not the best. I mean, on his day, it's definitely up there with the best. We saw it in the last final. I remember that contribution graphic that you mentioned to Hugo was incredible, just to see how he was essentially the best player throughout. And I think offensively, he's basically he's got all the weapons in the sense that any lob that is thrown at him, he can just tuck it away, and he doesn't need to have like an amazing bibora, let's say, because he just has like such a good smash that he doesn't need it. That's why potentially we don't see him as often hit a bibora, just because he just doesn't need to use that. He can win the point from the smash straight away. And in terms of winners, he's always up there in terms of the top. We know that he has like one of the top smashers in the game, volley wise as well. From that perspective, he's an amazing volleyer. He's also got an incredible serve. So him and Coelho are always like ranked the like either 1-2 in terms of serves or points one after the serve. So that also just shows you how aggressive he is as soon as they serve and how they're looking to win the point straight away. And in terms of the toolkit that he's got, he can also drop shot. I mean, smash defense. He can basically do it all offensively. So, I mean, and the results kind of go alongside the fact that he's so good offensively. They've won, I mean, I don't know exactly how many tournaments, but they've definitely probably won the most amount of tournaments so far this year.
I think maybe 6. I think it could be 6 tournaments, yeah.
6 titles this year so far, actually the same number as Galan, but they're definitely the top 2 right now. So yeah, I think for my best offensive player of the year award, I'm going to give it to Tapia.
Same here. I think it's going to get a bit boring throughout the episode. Yeah, Agustin Tapia for me. Obviously, there are a lot of contenders. I don't want to give names out, but taking into account that you can't repeat players, you can't give the same player 2 individual awards. There was no doubt in my mind this one had to be Agustin Tapia. I mean, you literally said it. His offensive repertoire of shots is, I think, the best in the world. His smashing is unbelievable. He pulls out the drop shots that maybe Galan, we've seen Galan play drop shots, but not as many and as well as Tapia. Then I think in terms of salidas, when the ball gets knocked over the portres and the players have to go out and win the point, I think he's the best in the world by far. He can just do everything. So yeah, no doubt. Agustin Tapia, obviously my favorite player as well. So very happy to give him this award. And yeah, no doubt in my eyes.
So that was a pretty straightforward one. And maybe now moving on to the best or the defensive player award. Hugo, what's your shout?
It has to be Super Raton, Fede Chingoto, aka the Wall. I mean, literally, what I've really started to appreciate this season is not just how good he is at the back of the court, because obviously he's amazing. He's so quick. He covers so much of the court. When you watch him play with Galan can literally just sit at the net, in and around, and Chingoto can just sweep the back of the court, go from side to side, no problem. His unforced errors count per game, per match, is so low. I mean, we're normally accustomed to see him make 5-6 unforced errors maybe in a whole match, and really long matches, which is just baffling when you look at it. That's like 1 or 2 unforced errors per set. So I think that speaks wonders. But I just wanted to emphasize how good he is from a defensive standpoint up at the net, because his blocking game is one of the best on tour. I think him and Galan make such a good partnership, or one of the reasons why they do is because they're both so consistent at the net. I mean, when players play aggressive shots, whether it's bajadas, víboras, aggressive volleys, when players go and it's all 4 at the net, going all out, Chingalan are the best pair. And I didn't really appreciate how good Chingoto is when he's that tight and that close to the net, when just defending, attacking shots. So yeah, it had to be Fede Chingoto for me, and I'm so happy to give him an award, because he's been, to be honest, he could have easily won this season's Most Improved Player award, to be totally honest. I never thought that he was going to reach the level that he's been playing at, the last 4 or 5 months. So hats off. What about you, Gons?
I'm going to give it as well to Fede Chingoto. I mean, and very happily to do so, because he's not only an outstanding player, but just an incredible person as well. So humble, such a hard worker, from such a humble background as well. And he's definitely earned it. And I mean, the defensive stats kind of just speak for themselves. He's the player with the least amount of unforced errors on tour, from an unforced errors percentage perspective. So, I mean, I think he's below the kind of average of around like 3%. So around like 2 to 3% of his shots end up being unforced errors, which is just like ridiculous. And I think I've also kind of appreciated how much he does for the pair as well. And I think especially in the last match, you can kind of see the work that he does behind the scenes to not only kind of make sure that the point is in the balance, but actually being able to dictate play. And I think that's such a big component of the players that are maybe a bit more defensive. They kind of have to be able to construct the point as well, and move the ball in kind of directions and positions where they know that then what they're going to get back is a good ball for the offensive player to take over. And I mean, there's no one better on tour to do that Chingoto. And yeah, I mean, he's just like, as you mentioned, he's literally a wall, and he will run for every single ball. He'll fight for every single point. So yeah, for me at the moment, the best defensive player, definitely Chingoto. But yeah, I definitely agree with you in terms of the most improved player. I mean, he can definitely be up there as well. I know that we had this rule where we kind of didn't want to give the same awards, but I mean, it's a great shout, because the transformation he's had over the last kind of 12 months, I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. I mean, potentially even better than what we saw the Neno last year have, if I'm honest.
I agree. I mean, being totally honest, and I never ever thought I'd say this, right now, for me today, he's the best forehand player on tour.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
A level above Coelho, a level above Lebron,
yeah,
for sure, a level above the Neno. I mean, and that is just something that I never thought I'd say. So
yeah, very true.
I think that's enough to justify why he could be a perfect contender for the most improved player. But at least he's won one of our awards, which I'm sure he'll be very happy to know.
Exactly. So maybe do you want to
next award? Next
award. So we also wanted to to give a shout out and to give an award to the best partner. I think actually, Hugo, this was your idea. I think it's a great idea and a kind of a great tribute to those players that are always like trying to, be cheerful, be positive, trying to help their teammates. This is not necessarily a sporting award where kind of the actual paddle side of it matters. I think there's a big component of just being able to be that stable kind of mentally right player and give essentially the pair the sort of energy they need to win matches. So I really like that you put in this award because it's maybe something that we don't necessarily speak a lot about, being a good partner and how important that is. But I do think that is like incredibly important.
Yeah, agreed. Do you want me to kick off, or do you want to kick off yourself?
Go for it.
Okay. Well, I had a lot of shouts, and to be honest, I'm thinking last season, if we'd given this prize out last season, I would have definitely given it to the Neno, probably throughout most of the seasons in his career. And it's not that he hasn't been as good at it every season, and he hasn't been as good a partner this season. But I think that Arturo Coelho deserves it because he is just always so supportive of Tapia. It doesn't matter what's going on in the match. It doesn't matter. When you think about what the perfect partner is having the partner who supports you when you make the mistakes, but also just being positive when he makes the mistakes. And you can literally see Tapia make 3 errors in a row, and Coelho literally points at him and says, "Well done," and claps at him. And to be honest, I'd never really seen anything like it. It's almost too much, like being too positive. But I don't think that really exists. So yeah, I mean, personally, I think Goya deserves it, and that's why I've given him the award. I think if I could pick the personality of a partner, a lot of it would come from Goya. So that's basically why I'm going for him. Gons, what's your shout?
Yeah, you know what? I've gone exactly the same, Arturo Coelho. And maybe I'll give different points, but a lot of it you kind of hit the spot for me. But another thing as well that maybe isn't mentioned, I don't know if you'll agree with this, Hugo, because it might be a bit controversial, but I do sometimes think as well that Tapia isn't the best partner. And I think that there's a lot of times and moments where he kind of disconnects from matches. He's not really there. He's just vocally very absent and unmotivated, he seems like. So as well, we're all human beings, and if you see that from your partner, it can also be quite unmotivating to you and it can bring you down. But I've never, no matter how Tapia is reacting, I've never seen Coelho down. And I love as well that when Tapia does a mistake, or let's say that he hits a smash and the smash isn't as good, and the opponents kind of get it back and win the point, Coelho is always like clapping him, like, you know what, you did the right choice. I always believe in you. I'm always going to believe in your smash. And I think that's like incredibly supportive, and it's kind of what these players need. So I think as well, he's so good when he speaks in interviews, and always so kind of, he's so self-aware of his own mistakes as well. He's so humble about it. We've seen him in so many changeovers in the bench being like, I'm just not giving you what you need, Tapia. Like, I'm really sorry. And I think that's kind of speaks volumes, because it's hard to do that, right? At that level, you've got such an ego. So I think for me, he's been definitely the perfect partner. And I agree with your shout out of Dineno as well. I did think about Dineno as well, Chingoto as well, I thought. But yeah, for me, Coelho, he's always got a smile on his face, and he's always supportive of Tapia, no matter if he does badly or when he does well. He's always the first one to cheering him on. And he's also very, he also just acknowledges his own mistakes, and yeah, I think that's credit to him.
100%. And maybe one last point on Coelho. If we were to give an award to the best loser, i.e. the best player in terms of when he loses, how he is with the rivals, how he congratulates them, what he's like after the losing, when you see players going to the bench and when they have a chat, he's just always so positive. it's not like he loses and he's smiling, but he's just always thinking positive. And yeah, I mean, it's amazing to see that from a player who's literally the best player in the world. I mean, he's the number one ranked pair in the world. So super impressive. So congrats, Arturo. You're this this half season's best partner.
I'm sure we'll see him there at the end of the year as well. But maybe moving on now, we also wanted to recognize the benches. I think they play a very important part of the game, and we kind of wanted to hand out an award to the best coach. And yeah, Hugo, please kick us off.
100%. I'm gonna be quick because I don't think there needs to be that much developing on this one, but I've given it to Jorge Martinez because I think the job that he's done so far with Chingoto and Galan, I never thought that a coach could achieve that in such short time. And looking at the players' abilities on paper, when Chingoto and Galan joined forces, and obviously that was the same at the same time as when Paquito and Lebron joined forces, and we were thinking about how the big dogs, either top four pairs, were going to perform. I put Chingoto and Galan last, I think, because I thought they were going to be a really solid pair, but I didn't expect them to. Well, I definitely didn't expect them to be one of the most dominant pairs on tour, if not the most dominant. And I think a lot of it comes from Jorge Martinez. He just has such a good relationship with the players, both with Chingoto and with Galan. He knows what to say to the players at the right moment during the games. I mean, even thinking of, there was a recent match, I think it was in the last tournament, he also coaches Delphi Brea and Bea Gonzalez. And there was a moment in the match where you could see Bea Gonzalez struggling a lot, probably because, if I'm not mistaken, she was coming back from an injury and she was suffering a bit. And all Jorge Martinez said, even given that they weren't performing to their usual level, he just said, Bea, more important than anything, I just want to see you smile. And immediately after that, change of sides and that kind of bench scenario, Bea started playing so much better. So I just think Jorge Martinez's coaching abilities, both as an expert of the game, which I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, we've seen how much he's influenced matches, the matches between Chingalan against Coello and Tapia this season, but also from a mental standpoint is close to none. So that's why I've gone for him. What about you, Gons?
I mean, absolutely no doubts here. Jorge Martinez, for sure. I think that not only with Chingoto and Galan, but you mentioned Delphi and Bea Gonzalez as well. I mean, how many times have we seen this guy on Sunday coaching the women's final and the men's final and winning both of them? I mean, none. We haven't seen any other coach do that. So Jorge Martinez, absolutely best coach so far. And I also do want to mention the fact and the work that he's done with Ale Galan. And this is something, I mean, he's been working with Ale Galan for a number of years now, because Ale Galan came through the M3 Academy when he was a bit younger. But Ale Galan was a player, and this is actually said by himself, he wasn't one of the top ranked players, prospects, when he was coming up on the tour. And I think now you can see that, I mean, he's kind of widely recognized, if not the best, like top two for sure, best players in the world. And the fact that he's been able to achieve world number one, win countless of titles, I don't think he could have achieved that without Jorge Martinez's influence. And we've also seen Chingoto. I mean, Chingoto before joining forces with Galan and being part of the whole M3 ecosystem, which is kind of under Jorge Martinez. I mean, Chingoto was, if I'm not mistaken, like 0-12 in finals, or like a ridiculous amount of final losses. He hadn't won a title. Well, he won one with Paquito, but he now is consistently there. You mentioned that he could be the best forehand player in the world right now. I mean, for sure, he's up there. So I think all of this is due to, large amount of it is due to Jorge Martinez. So yeah, no doubts for me there.
100%. So yeah, maybe moving on to one of the last awards that we want to give out. And I'd probably say it's the most important award. At least one of the top 2-3 is this season's, or obviously we're giving mid-season award, but the best player, the MVP. And yeah, it's obviously an award that doesn't have many contenders in my eyes. It only really has two for me, being Tapia and Galan. And given that you know the rules of the game, you know who I'm going to say, and it's none other than Alejandro Galan. I mean, you were literally talking about him right now. And I mean, really, the stats don't lie. He's been above everyone else from a statistics point of view, but also just, at least in my eyes, from a playing level. So when you watch the matches, he's been above everyone else since probably summer 2023. So a whole year, 12 months. And I mean, when you look at his game, he generates more winners than anyone else. And his unforced errors count is always so low week in, week out, given how risky the shots that he plays are. And yeah, as I said, Tapia would be my other shout, but I think that this season to date, Galan edges it. How about you, Gons?
Galan, no doubt whatsoever. I do agree that potentially number 2 is Tapia, but I mean, Galan, 6 titles this year. He's won with 2 different pairs, so with Lebron and now with Chingoto. He's been able to adjust to Chingoto's game, or I guess together they've been able to create this awesome partnership. And potentially now it's been so good that they've been copied by Lebron and Dineno. And they've definitely caused a lot of like pair splits because there's no way anyone can beat them. They've only made finals, so that's been their worst result. I mean, that is just absolutely insane. And when we think about how much of the weight of the pair is on him in terms of winning and the offensive side of the game, Chingoto obviously manages the defensive side, and that's a huge part. But at the end of the day, today's game, today's paddle is all about the offensive side, definitely at the pro level, and who can generate the most amount of winners. And to be honest, there's probably no better player to do that right now than Ale Galan. So it has to be Galan for me.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't agree more. And if I'm not mistaken, this is the penultimate award that we're going to give out because we don't want to bore you guys for too much longer. And we're probably a bit too excited about our own awards. But the next award and the penultimate award, as I just said, is for the worst pair, really. So a bit of a stinker, this award. You definitely don't want to win it. And Gons, do you want to maybe kick this one off?
Yeah, so I had, I guess, 2 pairs in mind, but ultimately I've decided to go with Los Super Pibes. I think it's been a hugely disappointing kind of half season for them. And it ultimately has ended with them splitting up. So, I mean, that's how bad it's been. I think when we look at last year, they were so good. They challenged the number 1 right up until the end. And at the beginning of the year, we all thought that it was going to be a 3-way battle for the number 1 between Galan and Lebron and Coello and Tapia and Los Super Pibes. And we all thought Los Super Pibes were going to be there. We all thought they were all going to be winning tournaments. And the only kind of top pair that hasn't won a tournament this year has been Los Super Pibes. They've only made 1 final. And that's because they, to I guess, go to the final, they had to, in the semifinals, they had to beat Paquito and Lebron. So I guess they kind of avoided meeting in the semifinals, either Coello and Tapia or Chingalan. They haven't beaten Chingalan at all this year. So it's just been hugely disappointing, mainly because I at least expected so much from them. And it's been so bad that they've essentially split up. So for me, they've been the most disappointing pair so far.
Well, that was definitely my other shout, but just basing my decision on my own expectations from the pair, it has to be Lebron Paquito. I mean, when we had this discussion regarding, and I've just mentioned it, which pair out of the top 4 when Paquito Lebron and Chingalan joined forces, which pair out of those 2, but also Chingalan and the Super Pibes was, well, what the ranking was going to be at the end of the season. And I put Lebron and Paquito as the 2nd ranked pair. And being quite honest, when you think about the top pairs so far this season, obviously Chingalan and Coello Tapia are at the top. You could almost argue that Yanguas and Garrido have been better than Lebron and Paquito. So I think that literally just reflects how poor they've been. Maybe poor is not the wrong word, but definitely they haven't reached the level that they expected, the level that a lot of other people, paddle fans, expected. So it's sad, and I had very high expectations for them, as I just said, particularly given that they were the number 1 seeded pair back in 2019 when they played together. But yeah, it has to be them for me.
That was also my other shout, to be fair. But I always had a bit of doubts with them. But yeah, I mean, for sure, they've also been quite the disappointment. And then maybe the best for last. So the best pair so far. Hugo, what are your thoughts?
So I think the award we just mentioned is probably the only one that we're going to disagree on beyond the best tournament, which is obviously quite hard because there's so many different options. I've gone for Chingalan for the best pair. And the reason why is because when you look at their head-to-head encounter against Koyan it's 5-4 to Chingalan, and Koyan are the number one seeded pair in the world. So taking that into account, also the fact that they only teamed up a few months ago, and also basing my decision on what my expectations were for this pair, which was they were going to be a really solid pair, but I definitely didn't expect them to be as good and as spectacular and as dominant as they've been for the last, X number of tournaments. I mean, they've literally made the final in every single tournament they played so far, which is absolutely baffling. And I definitely didn't think that they were going to do that. So it has to be Chingalan for me. Gons?
You know what, Hugo? I definitely thought we were going to disagree on this one, but we haven't, because I've also gone with Chingalan. I think you kind of gave away the reasons why. For me, it's massive that since they've been together, they have a positive head-to-head record against Goyo and Tapia. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, and speaking top of my mind here, I'm not exactly sure about this, but which other pairs have a positive head-to-head record against Goyo and Tapia? I mean, the only one that I can really think of that it could be Galan and Lebron, but even them, I'm just not entirely sure if they do. So potentially Chingalan are the only like pair that have a positive record against Koya and Tapia as a pair. So I mean that just speaks for itself. As you mentioned, they've only made finals and won tournaments. And yeah, without a doubt, I think the best pair so far this season is Chingoto and Galan.
Agreed. And if I'm not mistaken, Gons, I think this brings us to an end. I hope you guys have all enjoyed. Please, as always, leave your comments on the video. We're loving your comments so far. We're loving the interaction. So please keep it coming. And I mean, we'd love to hear your own shouts. We'd love to see a few of your own shouts regarding, maybe you think some of our shouts have been an absolute stinker. So if so, please share. Please let us know. But I think a lot of them you're going to agree with us. So would love to see them.
Yeah, I completely second that. Please do let us know who you think should have won these awards. Now, so Hugo, how do you think we're gonna send the trophy to the lads that have won it?
To be honest, I don't think they want this, Gons. So I think probably move on from that subject.
Yeah, maybe one day the Padel Pod Awards become something. But yeah. Anyways, I mean, it's all for the sake of fun. I mean, it's been great to do this episode, Hugo, as always, and I hope all our audience enjoyed it. And we'll catch you next time.
Cheers, guys. Have a great week.